Hi, I'm going to read The Coyote Christmas. This is a Lakota story from Native Americans. See the coyote? Coyote Christmas by S.D. Nelson. See the coyote over here? It's snowing and there's a truck coming down the road to the house. Coyote didn't know that it was Christmas Eve. He only cared that his empty stomach was growling and that his shivering in the cold of the night was settling upon the land. As he trotted across the hilltop of the Indian reservation, his ears perked to the sound of turning tires and moving metal. Below him, an old pickup truck was making its way along a dirt road towards the little ranch house. Sister Raven, see a raven? That's like a big crow. They're a big, loud, noisy bird. Sister Raven swooped down from the darkening sky with outstretched wings. She circled once above the coyote and perched nearby on a twisted branch. "Coyote, you old devil, what tricks are you plotting?" she asked. The coyote chuckled. He didn't mind being mocked by the black bird. After all, he was proud to be called the trickster. "Well, my feathered friend," answered the coyote, "if you hang around, I'll show you. I think I'll pay those two-legged creatures a visit and get me a free hot meal." Who do you think the two-legged creatures are? I think it's the people that are walking around down at that ranch house. There we see them. He's looking in the window at them. Down the hill the trickster went, with Sister Raven tagging along overhead. He sneaked around to the side of the house, and a gray-haired woman removed a pumpkin pie from the oven. He smacked his lips. One thing he admired about those two-leggeds was their food. It was delicious. Other than that, he thought people were foolish. A girl busily stacked pretty packages tied with ribbons, and the trickster saw a juniper tree sparkling with lights, which appeared to be growing inside the house. Coyote had heard about Christmas trees, and he realized it must be Christmas Eve. The boy and the girl sang a silly song about a reindeer with a red nose. Coyote listened to the entire tune, and near the end, he was humming right along. Old Coyote's empty belly groaned, and that gave him an idea for a trick. He had heard stories about the man in a red suit who visit children on Christmas Eve. If he could pretend to be Santa Claus, he just might be able to get a free meal. But where on such a snowy night could he find a Santa costume? The prankster decided to snoop around in the barn, but he got a big surprise as he passed the corner of the house. Look, this is the corner of the house, and what's happening? The family's pet dog charged out from the shadows under the front porch and barked, "Roo, roo, roo." The coyote turned, and he raised a paw, and he declared, "Stop, you stupid dog, or I'm going to turn you into a cat." The dog stopped dead in his tracks. He clamped his mouth shut and lowered his head, and he tucked his tail and returned to his bed under the porch. The last thing Brother Dog wanted to be was turned into a silly cat. Oh, look, this is inside the barn. See how it's dark and there's animals in there? 2 horses and a milking cow stood in their separate pens chewing hay. Upon seeing Old Man Coyote, the startled horses stomped their hooves and they cried out, "Hey, hey!" "Be quiet," demanded the trickster, "or I'll turn you into pigs." And the horses shut up immediately. They didn't want to be pigs. The frightened cow, on the other hand, couldn't stop her mooing. Coyote walked right over to her wooden stall. He raised a paw and he said, moo cow, moo no more. An owl you will be. Fly out the door." And in the next moment, the inside of the cow's pen became a bedlam of flapping wings, and a spooked owl banged into the wall and then flew out the door. Seems like the coyote's kind of magic, huh? Look at the coyote here. Rummaging about in the dimness, the coyote saw a faded horse blanket draped over a rail. It had a hole worn right in the middle. "Aha! This'll work nicely," said the shifty character, and he pulled the blanket over himself, poking his head through the hole. For a belt, he tied a rope around his belly. Next, he tied a rag on his head, and turning about in a circle, he chanted, "Rags I wear from foot to head, but I don't care, I'll turn them red." And in a puff of smoke, he was dressed in a red suit. Coyote then found fuzzy sheepskin hanging on a nail, and the troublemaker tied a piece of it just beneath his chin for a beard. And in the corner, he found an empty cloth sack which he stuffed full of straw and put over his shoulder, and the rascal stood proudly snickering to himself. The horses stared. They were silent in astonishment. Coyote had been transformed into the very likeness of Santa Claus. Let's take a look at what he looked like. Remember? Look, there's the sheepskin. And there's the blanket that he turned red and his bag with the straw stuffed in it. He's trying to look like Santa Claus. Let's see what happens next. The trickster walked directly towards the house and the waiting Christmas dinner. He passed the trembling dog beneath the steps, and he firmly pounded on the door. The music inside stopped. Grandma blurted out, "Who can that be on this Christmas Eve?" It seemed strange to her that their dog hadn't barked a warning as he usually did when the visitors arrived. The girl, Isabel, opened the door. There stood the fake Santa, smiling boldly. "Ho, ho, ho," he declared, and Isabel squealed with joy. "It's Santa Claus," she said, and she rushed forward and threw her arms around the sly night visitor. The boy, Davy, sat speechless. Likewise, Grandma and Grandpa were surprised beyond words. Isabel grabbed Santa by his paw and led him into the house. Dropping the big bag from his shoulder, the Coyote said, "I have Christmas gifts for everyone." And he followed that with another ho, ho, ho. Isabel twirled about and asked, "Grandma, can Santa stay for dinner?" "Bless you, my girl, you certainly have the Christmas spirit," said the fake Santa. Grandma and Grandpa were getting old and their eyesight wasn't the best. All they saw was a short figure dressed in red. "Grandma, please," insisted the little girl. "Well, I suppose you're right. After all, it's Christmas Eve," replied Grandma. "A hungry stranger is always welcome at our table." Grandpa brought another chair to the table. Coyote plopped himself down without hesitation. He licked his teeth and smacked his lips. He could hardly wait to eat. Look, he's even got a fork. See him licking his chops? For the first time, Coyote saw that Davy's chair was on wheels. With his hands, the boy wheeled himself towards the table and joined the others, who seated themselves. Coyote had never seen such a chair. He said, "My boy, what a curious and wonderful toy you ride on." Davy replied, "That's what some of the kids at school say, too. It's a wheelchair, though, not a toy. I ride on it because my legs don't work." "Oh," said the trickster, not really understanding. "It's okay, Santa. I guess it's all right," said the boy in his shy voice. See him sitting in his wheelchair? And he has some crutches over here. People sit in wheelchairs when their legs don't work so that they can get around. All right? Let's see what happens. Coyote, always hungry, was quickly losing interest in this talk about chairs with wheels, and he reached across the table for a bowl of meatballs. When he heard Grandpa's words, "We ask for a blessing on this holy night," Coyote quickly released the bowl. He bowed his head, put his paws together, and he pretended to pray along with the humans. Grandpa continued, "Thank you for our health and our happiness. Merry Christmas to all." The prankster had never eaten spaghetti with meatballs before. It was Grandpa's favorite dish, so Grandma had prepared it special for Christmas Eve dinner. At first, the Coyote had trouble slurping up the long, wiggly noodles. The old coot ate and ate until he had to loosen the rope around his swelling belly. When Grandma offered him a wedge of pumpkin pie, he actually hesitated, but after dessert he could eat no more. Let's take a look at that. Look at his plate full of meatballs and spaghetti, and they're all eating the noodles. See how they're slurping them? He even figured it out himself, even though he's a coyote. Sister Raven peered through the window at the strange goings-on. She had to marvel at the coyote's clever trickery, but maybe, just maybe, she could outdo the trickster with a trick of her own. Davy wheeled his chair away from the table and towards the Christmas tree. "Santa," he asked, "can you stay long enough to open gifts with us?" "Well, my boy," said Coyote, thinking about the bag full of worthless straw that he was about to leave as a gift, "I really should be going. I have many other visits to make on this special night." Isabel pleaded, "Please, stay just a little longer. Please, Santa." That's when the trickster decided to make his getaway. He planned to jump up from his chair and bound out through the door and be gone into the night. Instead, thanks to his full stomach, he stumbled off his chair and fell headlong onto the bag stuffed with straw. The sack burst open, spilling its contents upon the floor. Coyote could not believe what he saw. Look what fell out of his bag. Was it straw? Look, it's pretty. It's presents, and they're really pretty. He couldn't believe what he saw. Instead of straw, there were 4 big wrapped packages tied with ribbon. This unexpected magic was not his doing. Was it the work of some Christmas spirit? Thinking quickly, the rascal grabbed the package closest to him. The tag read Isabel. He gave it to the girl, and delightedly, she tore open the back wrapping. It was a set of paints and brushes of all sizes and special drawing paper and rows of colored pencils, just like the kind real artists use. "Oh, thank you, Santa," she exclaimed. "I love it." Giving gifts was not the trick the Coyote had intended. The family opened their gifts in turn. Grandma got an entire set of lovely china plates and bowls and cups and saucers, and Grandpa's gift was a fleece-lined leather coat. Everyone was overjoyed. They all looked on with smiling faces as Davy opened his Christmas present. The boy sat in his wheelchair, stunned and confused. His package was empty. He turned to look at the Coyote and asked, "Santa? Look at what he's opened." Everybody's got their present. Look, he's got his jacket on. She's all happy. He gets his empty box. Coyote looked at Davy in his wheelchair and he felt a twinge of guilt. The trickster had never felt sorry for anyone before. This cruel trick was worse than he had planned. He headed for the door, and this time his legs carried him. He ran out into the snowy night and he climbed on the top of the rail of the horse corral, and he turned to face everyone. Sister Raven watched the entire game from her perch up on top of the post. Brother Dog watched from his space under the porch. Even the horses in the barn looked out through the open door. Look at him trying to run away. He thinks he did something bad. Look at everybody watching. Look, does she look sad? How about them? Do they look sad? Look at the little boy. What's he doing? The family stood on the porch with surprised looks on their faces, looks that quickly turned to joy, for the entire family stood, even Davy. Look, his legs are working. His Christmas gift had not been an empty package. It was his walking legs. Davy and the little dog danced a jig out there in the snow. Everyone waved goodbye and cheered, "Merry Christmas, Santa!" Coyote pulled off his hat and he waved it back and forth over his head. He did a fancy balancing act on the crossrail of the corral. With a gleeful smile, he shouted, "Ho, ho, ho, Merry Christmas!" And then his feet slipped. Down he went, doing the split, and he landed with a thunk, smack on the rail, and it really hurt. But Coyote grinned through his pain, and he managed to whimper one more, "Ho, ho, ho," as he hobbled off into the wintry night. The horses were laughing up a storm, and poor Coyote had gotten his comeuppance. Sister Raven croaked a laugh too. She had to wonder who had really been tricked this night. She spread her wings and she hopped from her perch. "Hey, Santa, you're walking kind of funny. Did you hurt yourself?" she asked. "No," lied the limping Coyote. He considered turning Sister Raven into a flying meatball, but he'd had enough meatballs and tricks for one night. Besides, it was Christmas Eve. The end. Look, there's the crow.